to call this meeting to order, and our first item is proposed addition of new high school course baking and pastry arts. Sal, any items we group together here? I don't think that and government probably go together. Looks like they're separate, huh? Yeah. Okay. Baking and pastry arts. Oof. Any samples?
Come December 9th to
How could you do this to us?
Come to December 9th
haven't had dinner
Hubcap
yet.
Pop-Up
Huh?
Bakery. You could come. This time we will not sell out of crepes, we promise.
Yeah, I'm not the baker, so you wouldn't want my samples. But it is an additional course that would go in with our current hospitality and culinary program. It's a course that's specifically aligned with the Gateway program, so we could strengthen the college and career pathways opportunities where students can earn credit. As it mentions there, it wouldn't have any applications on staffing. It would just be a slight adjusting of sections. There's a number of introduction to foods courses and so forth that are running, and we would just run a couple less sections of those, but to implement this program in its place. And funding for equipment and so forth, we expect to go through with the Perkins grant and use that for the additional things that are needed for that. And the curriculum is pretty much outlined as what is in Hospitality 103 at Gateway Community College, and we're working currently, we started last spring and we'll complete that this year, so that we have a complete curriculum for the course.
Do you have any idea how much the proofing box, the convection ovens, and the 3-bay ware-washing sink would be? I know that you're indicating that the Perkins grant would fund it, but what is the approximate cost of that?
We're looking at that now. We're looking at an oven and a proofing box that would go together, and I believe it's around $8,000 for that. They are somewhat expensive, but our Perkins grant, we have generally put in about $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 into the culinary to upgrade or replace equipment in that area on a regular basis. We get about, this past year it was $56,000 from Perkins grants.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes.
The use of the Perkins grant, how much of that will be left over and will be enough to finish the curriculum on the CTE courses that have been approved that don't have curriculum yet?
There's a sizable amount for that purpose, and actually that's what a good chunk of the money is being used for this year.
So will this course have curriculum written after the CTE courses that were approved a year and a half ago, or will it run without curriculum?
It will not run without curriculum. The curriculum is being written this year along with the other curriculum as well.
I just need to clarify again, what Ms. Raccio is pointing out is that not all curriculum looks the same. We have course guidelines because that's what how curriculum was written many, many years ago. So I just want to clarify, and I just for clarity purposes, that there is no course that's running without curriculum. It might be in the older version of the curriculum prior to switching over to Understanding by Design, which was well prior to my arrival. They never transitioned in the CTE courses. And so therefore there was a template that some courses moved into, some courses didn't. So unfortunately there were a lot of courses in CTE that didn't move over to that template, so they had the course guidelines, the course outline that they were utilizing at that time. So Rob's been working with his department, which is a tremendous amount of courses, singleton courses as well as a series of courses. So 65 courses that had a transition from the course outlines to the Understanding by Design templates. So that work is continuing. So as we write new courses, the curriculum looks like the Understanding by Design courses, and we're taking some of the older courses, which are being mentioned, the CT courses, and moving into the new format. So again, it's not the curriculum that is being used. It was approved by the board many years ago. The curriculum course outlines, when those were approved in that manner, they are a different format, but the teachers are using that document.
Was that the background of your question, Tammy? Gotcha. Thanks. All right, if you're looking for a baker, I found one.
Oh, Sal has experience with crepes.
This is Sal at Celebrate Wallingford. You can see it. They were good. Sold those out, huh? Is that right, Sal? Which one? That was what was the name of that one?
There you go.
That's, well, there
Mike.
The one.
the Italian icebox crepe,
Oh,
crepe,
yeah.
icebox crepe, and then there was the cannoli
Oh,
crepe,
the cannoli crepe.
the menzo crepe.
That sold out,
correct.
the menzo cake, that sold out first.
Yeah.
Very good. Shall we take consensus?
Mr. Votto had one of those.
Just one?
Yes.
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 Yes. And yes. Thanks, Rob. Set. Now I gotta get back to my. Okay. Next is proposed modification of high school course AP U.S. Government and Politics.
Yes. Good
Yep.
evening.
Welcome.
I have with me Mr. Harris and Ms. Brinton, who can answer questions if you would like also. But this is a relatively simple situation. There's been a massive revision of the requirements for the course produced by the College Board. And social studies instruction is changing a lot. There was a time when it was almost a game of Trivial Pursuit. Can you remember a specific battle at a particular location at a specific time and date? That's not how it's viewed now. Now we actually expect kids to think and consider and reflect and analyze, and there's a lot more work to it. That's the change that's happened. There's a huge binder. I forgot to grab it. It's sitting on my desk. I forgot to bring it with me, but there's a huge packet of information about these changes. Most or a lot of the schools in the area are already at a full year for this course before the change. And Mr. Harris contacted me. He teaches it. He was concerned that there was no way we could do it justice in a half a year. And I kind of looked at the stuff with him and said, okay, you're correct. We need to make this change. So I don't know if you have any specific questions you want to ask either of these folks. It has gone through the process, been approved by everybody along the line, including the high school principals and all that kind of thing.
So I'm not sure I can do this math, but it's something like 40 years ago, right? Sophomore year in college, I had a full year European history course with, when you didn't have to know a name or a date. And it was all about teaching you, if these situations start to arise, what's likely to happen. It was all cause and effect. I think this is wonderful.
And that's the kind of shift this is moving toward.
Yeah, that's great.
Something that requires more thought. There's still a significant degree of what might be viewed as sort of pure content that still has to be mastered. It is a college level course, but again, you know, there's I think it's, what is it, 9, Jim, Supreme Court decisions?
Yeah, 9, 14 foundational documents,
And
argumentative essay.
there's a whole lot of stuff.
So it's much more inquiry.
It is.
Yeah.
They're basically making it more in line with, I think the other AP courses that we have, AP World, AP US. As Jim said, they're getting away from just, one of the reasons why you could teach AP Government in a half year was just content. Even the free response questions were basically, the kids could have bullet pointed the answers. This one is asking to do a lot more, both qualitatively, quantitatively. And I think it's a response. Colleges recently have been kind of pulling away from the AP Gov course because of the fact that they're not asking the students to do a tremendous amount of skills. But I think this is the AP program's response.
Great.
But it seems to me like it is, what you're saying, that part of it is still involved, it looks like, in this course.
Yes, yeah, and they're adding these other elements to it, not replacing the content.
Right, I mean, because you do need content.
Right, it's exactly what they do with the U.S. history course and the world history course. They really kind of brought those aligned the last 10 years to do the same thing.
Yeah,
They want the students to
they
know
haven't
stuff
do-
and do things with it.
They're not deleting anything, they're adding stuff, and they added a lot.
And this is grade 9 they're doing?
It's taught in grade 9, yeah. It got moved a few years ago. I was not yet involved with social studies or the curriculum office at the time. I know there were some concerns about whether 9th graders can handle it, but I think Mr. Harris would tell you that almost to his surprise, they've done just fine.
Yeah, I've seen, in the 3 years that I've taught it, really negligible difference between the scores in the AP exam for the freshmen and the AP kids. And we taught a course similar to this to freshmen as well, before civics and AP government were freshman courses. World history was a freshman course.
That's what I was just gonna ask. That's
Yeah.
no longer?
That's now a sophomore year course. We do junior year is US history, sophomore year is world, and freshman year is civics and AP government.
Freshman year as well?
Civics or AP government.
It's a civics course if they don't take AP. Oh, I didn't know that. How come I didn't know that?
Required for graduation, actually. They have to have a course in civics.
That I knew, but I didn't know it
Yeah.
was in ninth grade. I thought.
Yeah, that was a shift we made a few years ago.
4 years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah, we made that shift about 4 years ago.
Huh. Fine with me.
Good.
The more
Any other
civics you
questions?
get, the better.
No.
Folks? Should take consensus, Pat?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, with just the correction of a clerical error. And
Folks
Yes.
got it? And yes. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you, folks.
Good to
Appreciate
see
it.
ya. Okay, item C is proposed adoption of K through 12 science graduation standards and performance indicators.
Hello again,
Howdy.
much shorter document this time. So we've been going through the process of developing mastery-based learning standards, and if you remember from the curriculum documents that you saw last month, a lot of these standards and indicators, they were all embedded within those curriculum documents. So this document kind of pulls it out so you can see the progression from pre-KK all the way up through grade 12. They're much more content specific. The first set that we started with were based on the practices, and they were much more general. And when we came to writing curriculum, the teachers found they didn't know how to make it work. They couldn't figure out how to assess them and how to teach them, and they wanted something much more content-based. So we took the practices and the content and wove them together into the standards and indicators that you see in front of you.
Glad to see that. Neat content.
Do you have any
I'm
questions?
good. Any questions? No? Great. Pat?
Yes.
Yes.
yes, with just a clerical correction.
Yes.
You guys got the correction?
They will.
Yeah, they will. Okay. And yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Item D. Proposed adoption of revised grades 3 through 12 world language graduation standards and performance indicators.
Hi, everyone.
Howdy.
So these will look vaguely familiar to you. There's just a mild change in regards to, in comparison to what we put forward last year. Once we got a chance to kind of interact with the standards a bit more, we realized that we were a bit too broad in a few areas. So the main change is coming in standard 1, interpretive communication, and in standard 3, presentational communication. Interpretive communication being the ability to demonstrate that you understand something that you are viewing, hearing, seeing. So we ended up breaking out being able to demonstrate comprehension of what you read and comprehension of what you hear rather than having those lumped together. And standard 2 we left the same. Standard 3, presentational communication, we broke out speaking and writing. So after kind of dabbling with it a little bit and using our indicators and looking at student work and looking at what we really value, we wanted to break apart presentational writing and presentational speaking. And our global awareness standard number 4 and our interpersonal communication standard number 2 are the same as, I think it was last fall that we shared them with you at that point. So the revisions were really in 1 and 3.
Good. Questions?
Could you just explain the levels to me for a minute?
Sure. So in grades 3, 4, 5, and 6, every student is having the same, is interacting with the same curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
And then once we reach grade 7, that's where we start to have different level offerings for students, but that's also where the curriculum starts to overlap with the high school curriculum. So grade 7 middle school curriculum matches our high school level 1. So in terms of ease of language and ease of inputting these into Power School and sort of across the board, it made sense to us to, once we reached the end of grade 6, where the students stopped having an assured experience that didn't match the high school at all, that we started to then call them levels. So level 1 is for grade 7 and high school level 1, and level 2 is for grade 8 and high school level 2. No?
No,
Not making sense?
no.
Um,
Compare it to Spanish 1, Spanish 2, Spanish 3.
okay, so high school Spanish 1 is Spanish 1 is a high school offering, and it's also a 7th grade offering.
Gotcha.
So we call that level 1. And then Spanish 2 is a high school offering and also an 8th grade offering.
So a child can conceivably take Spanish 2 in 8th grade and be ready for Spanish 3 in 9th grade?
Yes.
That's right.
We have about 50 to 60% of the 8th graders are being recommended and choosing to follow through with that recommendation to go on to level 3 in Spanish or French. Other students are are recommended to repeat to or choosing to repeat to,
Right.
and then therefore foregoing getting the high school credit for their work done in 8th grade. But
Do
if
they
they,
have to take any kind of an exam?
we do administer the same, we administer basically the same exam that we do at the high school to the 8th graders that are in that 3rd year of language study in middle school. It's just very difficult to administer that exam on a middle school schedule. So
Oh, now they have 70 minutes though.
yeah, that's true. I think it was 1 year ago that we proposed it to you to truncate it a little bit, just so that it would fit into 3 of their school days rather than 4 or 5, and then you put a snow day in there and a sick day in there. It was becoming a nightmarish scheduling thing to provide a data point that was really provided in the quarterly grades for 99% of the students anyway, but we did still want to have a cumulative experience to be part of that high school recommendation process.
All right.
But it's something to revisit with the change in the schedule, now that there are more blocks of time.
Now, would it be safe to say, if I look at this standard, let's say standard 1,
Mm-hmm,
where it says level 1,
mm-hmm.
could I put down Spanish 1?
Sure.
Same thing.
Yep.
Level 2, Spanish 2.
Yep.
What happens level 4? Is that?
Spanish 4, French 4,
Really?
all,
Okay.
yep.
I think maybe we should put
We
a
do
little-
have different standards for Latin. So these are our modern language standards, and we have our classical language standards, but we didn't make any changes to those in the last year, so we aren't re-bringing them for approval. But Latin has different skills that we're expecting the students to demonstrate mastery of. So these are for our 4 modern languages.
Okay. Maybe somewhere on here we should put at level 1 equals Spanish 1 or something like that. I don't know, would anybody need to know that, or should I?
We could say
That
level
might be
1,
helpful.
i.e. Spanish 1, or, yeah.
Okay. I'm all set.
Any other questions? Pat?
Yes.
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 And yes. Thanks.
All right. Do we have
So,
any flexibility with the agenda, or should we, the teacher?
yeah, you can, yeah, sure.
Okay. We have a teacher and parent here to talk about the Germany trip, and I'd love for them to, if we're able, for them to share before I talk about the global competency.
Sure.
Okay. Do you guys want to talk, or do you need a little more? Okay.
Good evening.
So this is, Peter Fleischman is our
I'm
German
sorry, hang on
teacher.
one second. I have a
Okay.
procedural thing here.
Should we? Yeah.
Well, you can.
Do you have to?
take-
No, we don't have to. It's only committee.
Yeah. you-
Okay.
I
Yeah.
don't think it's.
Didn't know if we had to
it's a
take an
teacher.
action to switch the items, but
I was
the order,
thinking
but
that
we
you
don't.
would-
That's
no?
okay, go
Okay.
ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. Peter Fleischman is our German teacher here in Wallingford at Sheehan, and Nana Morrison is a parent of at least two Sheehan students, or one current, one former? Two Sheehan students. And her daughter has participated in hosting one of the German students from Utlangen, Germany, and her daughter and Nana will be traveling with the group this summer. So she will be the 3rd chaperone with the student group. This is a program, we're in our 4th year with this sister school in Utlangen, Germany, and we're on an every other year rotation where we host and then we travel, we host and we travel. So last year we hosted 20, more than 20, right? This school
I
year.
mean, last school year, this year.
Last school year, this fiscal year, we hosted.
They were here in May.
Calendar, yeah.
And then the majority of our then Moran and Sheehan students, but now all Sheehan students that hosted will be traveling and experiencing the reciprocal experience of living with the students and families that we hosted. And Nana's family has actually participated in the Argentinian exchange as well. So she's a great accolade to what these programs mean to our district. So do you want to talk about the program at all, or have you already gotten a chance to look through? The one thing we weren't able to share with you ahead of time was the day-to-day itinerary, right? Should we?
Well, a little bit, if I can just add, that is, that you get a sense of proportionality, maybe. I think you
Peter, you might just want to turn on the cameras over there. Might just want to get to the other side of the mic.
like this.
Or might, yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Just flip the mic over. No, that's right, stand up and just turn the mic around.
There you go.
No karaoke.
Yeah, yeah. That doesn't start until 8:30. You got it?
That's right.
So you need it for the
I'll
recording.
stay.
Okay, got it. Okay. The one thing is that we do have only 55 students in average in German, just to give you a proportionality of how many of the students get involved in the program. It's not exactly the same, but I think there are over 600 students in Spanish between the two high schools, and they sent 20 to Argentina. I was on that trip too, as a fill-in chaperone. But so when we put the call out, our sister school in Germany, they had 80 people who wanted to come. There's no way for us to accommodate it. Plus, the sponsoring organization, this organization called GAP, German American Partnership Program, they've done this for like almost 40 years now. 40,000 alumni that have gone through this program, and they're kind of under their supervision, or not supervision, but they support this exchange. And it's originated by two governments, the German and the American government wanted this exchange to happen. So that's kind of the background for those who might not refresh your memory on that. So we started with them, and so there's a much more of a volume coming, the interest, there were more that want to come and travel. So they said, can we go from 15, our original number was 15, to 20, and we were really scrambling to find 20 families to host. It's not that easy when you have only 55 students on the program. So we doubled up with some of them, and it worked. So we had 20. So we want to inch up to the maximum that you can take is 25. That's what the GAP framework allows. And the follow-up from that is that some individual exchanges can happen. So that's the next phase. So out of this, it's a special program that actually is grandfathered in because it's been done so many years that there's no restrictions except they have to, what is unique is that they have to go to school. There are many exchange programs, but our exchange program is very affordable. We are charging $1,500. The Disney trip costs more than that. And we are going for almost 3 weeks. So when you think that in proportion, because they live with the families and it's for free, and it's vice versa. So that kind of fills it in. And then, so now they've come twice. Last time was this calendar year, and in this school year, next year, 2018, we will be traveling again to the same place. We know the first exchange when we traveled went very smoothly, and there were all kind of issues surrounding it because there were the attacks in Paris and this and that in that same year. But we were lucky there was nothing that affected us. But those kind of things. What is always important that I feel is like the parents were very, very strong in their commitment. So we just had last week on Thursday, we had a meeting where all the parents came, and out of the 20 that hosted, just about everybody's traveling, which is, I think, amazing, to get everybody to come and reciprocate. So one issue is they might want us to send more if we can, because they had so many who wanted to come, so there's also more interest on the other side to host as much as possible. So, but other than that, what is the extension that I wrote into the itinerary was that last time we traveled and made excursions. And the further excursions, depending on traffic on the highways, can take up to 3 hours. You travel on a daily excursion to Munich, for example, from there, and then you come back these 6 hours on the road. And I saw also what many other GAP programs are doing. They go a couple of days extra after the school visits are done, and then they do some sightseeing. So what this time what we're having in the itinerary, that's the change, is to go to Munich, stay in a hostel for a night, and travel from Munich to Berlin, which is a new thing, which is the capital. I think there's a lot of significant things to see, just for 2 days essentially, and then come back and fly back after it. So we have like a 3-day sightseeing extension that we added to the trip. So that's the major thing. And I visited all those places this summer. I was there because I was on a stipend. So I was at the hostel that we were using. I slept there, I saw the place. I took the train, and it was basically, I ran the whole thing through. So some reassurance that things should work okay.
Any questions, folks? So all the safety and communications, we have that all in place, right? We're comfortable with it all, and
We're getting very used to it. Kim is very used to following through with all the staff on this. And again, I want to thank the staff, but also the parents. I can't thank them enough with the Argentina. I knew you, because when I saw you, I'm like, okay, wait, she's done both. You've been doing both.
Absolutely.
So once you're hooked, you're hooked.
Oh, it's such an opportunity for the kids.
Yeah. So I just want to say thank you, but the parents have been so supportive, and with Kim's leadership and her role, making sure that all of our I's are dotted and our T's are crossed, it's been very successful.
wonderful opportunity. Great, thanks.
This is in German.
Shall we?
How am I supposed to read it?
Yes.
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 And yes. Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you
Okay, and so,
Oh, can I-
where are we going next?
One
Go
little
ahead.
thing, sorry.
Okay.
Just
Yeah.
it would help us if there's a way to, there's a ratio between 1 to 6 with the chaperones, right? That's kind of in there. And
Yeah.
when we have right now 18, right?
Yeah.
So if we have 1 or 2 more, which are in the pipeline, is there a way to consider, that's all I'm saying, to up it from 6 to 7, which would give us a little flexibility to accommodate. I'm just telling you not to say, I respect fully what the board is doing in the policies, but when I was at the training for GAP in New York, there was not one school that had 1 to 6, not one. They have like 7, 8, even up to 10. I'm not saying that's what we're gonna, but from 6 to 7 would be something, would help us to be a little bit more flexible. But if, we get another student, then we have to get another chaperone, and the costs go up significantly. Just for what it's worth. I don't know what the procedure is.
Just a thought, maybe should we ask you to, policy,
It is
maybe?
policy.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
that
maybe
would
if
go back
there's,
to the policy committee.
okay, so
Isn't
should we go back to the
Is- I
policy
think in the
committee, get
po-
some research?
It's in the
Some data on
policy
it?
6.
Yeah.
Right, but I mean,
Yes.
isn't there also something in the policy about exceptions or
It's-
not?
I'm not sure.
Yes, it says exceptions exceptions, requests for exceptions need to be presented to the Board
Right.
of Education.
Okay.
So if you feel appropriate, to,
So,
no,
So right
Yeah,
now,
we'll wait and
whenever.
see where we
Yeah,
are. Yeah.
whenever, yeah.
So what is the situation right now? I want to get back.
we are maxed out with 3 chaperones.
Yeah.
We're maxed out with 3
18
chaperones
students.
And,
So
if
if
we
another
have,
kid
and I
wants to
have
go.
1 or 2 that are already saying,
that they won't.
yeah, they were hosting, but they want to switch the partners, so I put them on the side. This is all these details. But yeah, we probably could easily pick up 1, 2, 3 more.
Students.
And the
Right.
difficult thing is that you need 5 or 6 more students to foot the bill for that 4th chaperone. So it kind of ends up being an all or nothing situation with the kids in groups of 6. The way that we budget, we really budget for each student to only pay for 1/6 of one adult's
When are they going?
flight.
You just answered
And-
my question.
And
So, not for anything, but I know in there's other
22nd.
trips that occur that I think the chaperones pay their own way, so this is very generous of you, I think.
Well, it's also
To be
gap
doing that.
policy.
Oh, it's gap policy,
Because they pay half of 2 chaperones
okay,
flights.
Yep.
So there's a little subsidy in there, so then we go with that. But if somebody wants to donate or pay up, they're always
Why are you
free
looking
to
at
do
me?
that. Sorry.
Actually, a lot of fundraising also.
Yeah, the fundraising has been pretty good.
and
Okay,
BYK
so-
has been generous to the exchange.
So if applicable and appropriate, you would bring it in.
Yeah, Kim would bring it to us, and then we'd bring it to the board.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay,
Okay.
so Kim, next we're going to which?
We can talk about the other field trip right now, if
Yep.
it makes
Yeah,
sense.
go ahead.
Yes.
So this field trip is different in many ways. It's a sightseeing tour versus a language homestay immersion. It's through a company, so the company Jump Street handles soup to nuts, finances, all the medical information, all of the, thank you. Did you get the detailed itinerary for the Quebec trip?
We
The
did.
Quebec-Montreal trip this year. So it's 4 days, a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday in April. We worked with Jump Street with our policy, which was really pleasing to see. They pay for one adult for every 8 students, and we asked them to, if they would be willing to pay for one adult for every 6 students so that we could be in line with our district policy. And they worked through without having to compromise the level of hotel that we would be at or the level of ground transportation or anything, and they came through with that. So we were really excited about that. And our French teacher at Lyman Hall and our French teacher at Sheehan have used Jump Street for upwards of 15 years. I got the opportunity to go with the Sheehan teacher a couple of years ago. It's very well run. A really nice addition that Jump Street includes in the price is a security guard on the floor for the students in the hotel. So that's good for making sure nothing gets to them, but also making sure they don't get anywhere. And then the teachers can sleep, which is it's a nice addition that
Yes, it is.
doesn't add an exorbitant cost. But it's a very robust itinerary. It's a wonderful trip. Ground transportation all the way from Wallingford up through the border and back to Connecticut. And a lot of cultural immersion on this trip, and a lot of encouragement for the students to interact with the language and get to experience the people and the language and the sites that they learn about within the classroom walls all the time. But we have a ringing endorsement for Jump Street for sure, and I think it just got elevated this year when they came through for us on a 1-to-6 ratio. It was great.
I noticed that in comparing the 2 trips, the trip to Germany indicated that they were going to, their approval was pending registration of the trip with the U.S. Embassy or consulate. Now, will you do that with this trip as well?
Jump Street does that for this trip, but
Okay.
any trip that we sort of run in-house and use a local travel agent, I register all of the groups through I'm going to forget the acronym right now, but there's a,
SOS.
no,
No, not that one.
no, it's like
Students.
it's on it's on that detailed German itinerary,
Mhm.
like on the 4th or 5th page, the
State
website is
Department?
there,
Yeah.
and you register the group so that the U.S. Embassy knows that we have an educational group traveling abroad, and there are myriad contact numbers for the group abroad and here. It's on that checklist.
IBRS, is that the one?
Is that what it is on there?
IBRS? Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
And it's a time-consuming process, but it's worth it. And then there's a lot of peace of mind that comes with our families here, knowing that that's the email and those are the phone numbers that would be contacted in case of anything. And then any phone numbers that are traveling abroad with the group get registered also. For Germany, it would be the phone numbers and the addresses for all of the host families, and then Peter and Nana's and Jim Andresen's phone numbers abroad, and the phone numbers and locations for the hostels. And you input where the closest hospitals are and the closest dentists. And so it kind of forces your hand to do a lot of preliminary research, which is really great to do anyway. But Jump Street does that for the group.
Okay.
So, but we do that for Germany and Argentina, and hopefully other exchanges, other homestay exchanges that will get off the ground in the future.
I used Jump Street when I was principal in Wethersfield, when we used to take the kids to Quebec and Montreal. And I traveled with them all the time as principal, and it was a great tour group. I mean, very, very well organized. Couldn't change things. We had an issue with a hotel that they didn't know about till we got there. It was a construction issue. They switched. I mean, they were just really on top of their game. And the students had a great time, which was key.
Any other questions? Okay. Pat?
Yes.
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 And yes. Thanks, Kim.
Great.
And last, we have Global Competence Certificate Pilot Program. Interesting.
Yes.
Very interesting.
So the Connecticut Certificate of Global Engagement is something that Sal is the head superintendent on the CAPS International Education Committee. So this is something that Sal has been a part of for 9 or 10 years probably,
It's
just
like
sort of getting
12 years.
12 years, just laying the groundwork for this and recognizing that we need to do something in Connecticut to recognize and incentivize students who pursue coursework and extracurricular activities that are global in nature, that broaden their view of the world. And so, actually, are you clicking, Carrie? Okay. So, this will eventually, and I'll speak to this in a minute, this will eventually be a seal on a student's diploma. So it will be something that we put on the students' transcripts, and then coming along with that will be something that we write in their school profile that goes along with their transcripts to college, where we will spell out what it is that they did, what it means that they got the CTCGE on their transcript. And we have no reason to think that the State Board of Ed, the State Department of Education, in April will not approve this as well, as it doesn't have a dollar sign attached to it. They've been working along with us as we've developed the parameters for us. There was a preliminary meeting with the Committee of Standards and Assessment in October. So we have every reason to believe that this will be something that the State Department next year will be bestowing upon students who demonstrate critical thinking and real-world problem solving in cross-cultural settings. This is a great way to recognize students who have deliberately sought out opportunities to do these types of academic and extracurricular, to engage in these types of opportunities during their high school career. So if you want to hit the next slide. Thank you. So the CAPS International Ed Committee was sort of who started to say a few years ago, there are approximately 13 other states that are doing this. And we really looked hard at Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Illinois while we were drafting our draft, which we're really very much still in the draft stages, to look at, okay, what is an appropriate credit count? What is an appropriate grade for students to receive in courses that are going to count towards this? How many years of a world language? Does it have to be the same world language that's studied for all 3 years? So we really we looked at all of the states' different programs. We pulled those three together, Illinois, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, that seemed like they kind of had the most to offer us in terms of where we wanted to go as a state. The World Affairs Council has been working closely on this with us as well. And then there's been a small subcommittee of people. So Sal brought me onto the CAPS International Ed Committee a few years ago. And so I've been part of this small subcommittee of people, one of whom is the state social studies consultant. So he sits on our subcommittee, and we came up with what is ultimately our draft of requirements right now for the certificate. And I don't want to say the word draft so many times that you get sick of hearing it, but it really is a draft. And kind of the whole goal of this pilot year, which we are one of the pilot districts this year. And I think there are 8 other pilot districts. We're piloting with East Granby, Glastonbury, Region 12, which is Washington Depot area. There's a CREC school, the Metropolitan Learning Center is piloting this with us, Meriden. And then there are a lot of districts that initially said, we'll let you guys pilot and see how it goes, who are now saying, all right, we'll jump in for the pilot as well. So we've had Westport reach out and initially say no, but maybe they might jump in now. Same thing with South Windsor, because there really isn't a tremendous burden on the district to do this. So the students, if you this is sort of broken up into a 3-prong chart here. So the students need to, they need to successfully complete 7 academic credits that have a global focus. So we're lucky here in Wallingford in that some of those are built-in opportunities for the students. They take world history, they take world lit, they take contemporary global issues, all before their juniors. And then on top of that, they have the opportunity to pursue art courses and many more English and social studies courses that have a global focus, and world language courses on top of that as well. So that first part, which I could definitely see changing as we go through the pilot and collect people's feedback. The first part speaks to the academic portion. The second part, the students need to engage in globally focused extracurricular activities, either in school or outside of school. So at this point, well, I won't skip around. And then the third component is the global service learning or action project. So they need to choose some one thing that is global in nature that will encourage them to explore the world outside of their everyday world. They need to research something, take action on something, communicate to diverse audiences, and ultimately raise awareness or more about an issue that is global in nature. So in terms of us here in Wallingford, we offered ourselves to be one of the pilot districts, and at this point I've met with, I spoke to interested juniors at an Office 45 session earlier in the school year in September, and from there I reached out to all of those students, and there are, I think, 17 that have expressed an interest in moving forward with this with the goal of completing this by this April. So we're submitting our names to the Connecticut State Department of Education now, our names of our students as well as their plan for their global service learning piece, because that's really sort of that's the meatier part, and the part that maybe they don't already have sort of partially checked off already. And then they have by this April to complete these requirements in order to be a recipient of this school year. They can also go into their senior year and receive this. So I'm working with a Lyman Hall student right now who definitely has a 2-year plan where he's looking at water contamination in Eastern Europe and how that affects their health and well-being. And he's told me right from the outset that this is going to take him more than a year to do, which is absolutely fine. And then he can simply list on his college resume that he is an intended recipient of the CTCGE, which will be listed in the school profile explaining what it is. But we have a fair amount of juniors who are on track to complete this year, which is, it's really exciting. Yeah, Mike.
So basically, they do all this work and they get a certificate?
They get a seal on their diploma. They get written on their transcript that they are a recipient of this.
Does it have meat when it's on your transcript? I mean, is
Well,
it something?
yes, but
Yeah.
we have letters of, in order to move to the state level, because this has to be approved by the State Board of Education.
What does?
This certificate totally.
Our particular, for our school system?
Well,
No,
for the
this
whole
is a
project.
statewide
We're part of
pilot.
the statewide pilot.
Gotcha.
So that's why it's been 12 years, because there's so many levels of bureaucracy.
Mm-hmm.
So first of all, we had to actually establish, yeah, I'm not kidding. So it was my second year as a superintendent that we started this process. But it really didn't take a lot of, there were a lot of things that occurred. But what happens is that we had to present, as Kim said, there was an initial presentation to the Curriculum and Assessment Committee for the State Department. They approved it, but prior to that, we had to make sure that we vetted it with a variety of organizations. So we have letters of support from CBIA, from CABE, CAPS, CAS, from the world.
Actually, I had that on one of the earlier
Yeah.
slides, and I didn't mention it, but Connecticut Organization of Language Teachers, Connecticut Council of Social Studies, we worked with UConn. CBIA, CABE, CAPS. We have letters of support from companies and schools that interact with Connecticut companies
Did we
and
need
schools.
that, or was it something we just did for our own?
Well, we did it as a committee, the committee that I chair. We did it because we wanted to make sure there was no doubt that we weren't going to have this, that this was going to happen, because we feel so passionate about this, because nationally this is a growing trend to have this opportunity for students. So we wanted to make certain there were two things. First of all, we wanted to show that we had multiple constituent support, but secondly, we wanted to make sure that there was an equity opportunity across the state. So there's no additional cost to this. There's a lot of certification programs where students have to take an extra assessment and the district or the student has to pay. There's no additional cost to this. This could be, we wanted to make certain that any student who takes a traditional high school experience at any high school across the state has access to this. And so that was a key thing, and that we feel that that's been accomplished. And that's why, as Kim said, a lot of districts are jumping on board after the deadline, because they're realizing, wait a minute, this wasn't like the last one that was not from us, but another certificate requires additional expenditure on the part of either the student or the district. So those were our two key things that we wanted to make sure.
So this project could be part of their, could be the capstone, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know.
And we really did want to vet it by all of those parties and get their input. It was interesting to get the input from CBIA. It was very interesting to get the input from those governing bodies of those content areas, because
We
this
have from the
very
U.S.
much.
Department of Commerce, we have a letter
Mhm,
from them.
mhm.
It seems to me what would make this real meaningful is if there was a direct interpersonal relationship with somebody from a different culture as a part of this program.
And that often, that
We
is.
have some students
Yeah,
that is absolutely part of.
Yeah, but I'm wondering if for everybody.
To
should
make
be
it
a
almost
requirement.
Jay, that's the 2A, right?
yeah, it's the,
What's,
2A.
The 2A is a possible suggestion to students of an
Engagement with
extracurricular.
countries.
2A, where am I missing that? Directing, oh,
That was your-
yeah, or, even people right here. Right,
Mhm.
through
Exactly.
SCOW or whatever, or like,
Well,
what
that's-
an opportunity for like big brothers, big sisters.
that's
to,
what one of our
Yes.
students
where
did
they
for
can
her
be
capstone,
doing-
and
helping
yeah.
them as well.
We
Yeah.
have a student who is actually one of two seniors who, when I was looking at the capstone titles for capstone night last month, or in September, I realized that two of them were likely very in line with the CTCGE. So I reached out to the two young women and we met, and we looked at the other requirements for this. But one student right here at home looked at, she was an ELL student, recognized once she reached the end of her ELL services. So she sort of tested out of ELL. She really still didn't feel like she had that academic English that you just don't have when you grow up in a home of heritage speakers of another language. And she was born and raised here, but a heritage speaker of another language, so you're not exposed to that academic English until kindergarten. And so she spent a massive amount of time and effort putting together sort of elevated services for all of the ELLs at Stevens, and offered it as an after-school intensive opportunity last school year for the ELs at Stevens. And I think that's an amazingly sustainable example of this, where we could have a student in pursuit of the CTCGE kind of maybe all the time be maintaining that relationship. And certainly that's something that we could expand to our other schools. But SCOW is a great.
Or whatever, it just seems,
Mhm.
seems to me that for it to be really meaningful, if our objective is cultural appreciation, is that, to read stuff in books and visit museums and stuff like that is nothing like having an interpersonal relationship, developing an interpersonal relationship.
Absolutely. One of the
Mhm.
students,
See how that they live through.
one of the students from Lyman Hall, who's presently in the capstone class, and it'll be he definitely will be eligible for this next year, is that he's planning in response to the hurricane in Puerto Rico. He's planning and working with the people that are facilitating crew to establish the relationship through Habitat Through Humanity. And so, we're planning the trip next year to go to Puerto Rico to help build. So there's that he's already establishing relationships there, and then to actually go in and have that experience, that personal experience. But we didn't want to make it solely about travel. That was the other thing.
Well, that's what I think.
So
Something like
even
this you can do
locally,
right here.
exactly. And
Mhm.
those are the perfect
Absolutely.
examples, because again, it goes back to that equity piece. Not every child's going to be able to travel.
Yeah.
But the local ideas, and the World Affairs Council, which Kim mentioned earlier, they're part of also the Asia Society. So those are two large organizations that help with Connecticut-based activities, and they offer some incredible seminars for high school students,
Mhm.
and connect the students with some of the individuals. They did a large one on Islam last year, and they connected students with some authentic opportunities and experiences. So we're fortunate. And I do want to, before we conclude, is I want to make sure to give Kim a tremendous amount of credit, because until we brought the practitioners on board, and it wasn't able to get to where it is today. And so I just want to thank Kim. I feel very fortunate because she really has taken it over. She's worked very closely with Eve Peck, who's from the World Affairs Council, and then Steve Armstrong, the gentleman that she mentioned from the State Department. So it's been fantastic to see this blossom. I've just tried to orchestrate and kind of get the red tape cut, so to speak. But really, they've done the hard work, and I'm really proud of Kim and the fact that we're working together on this.
It's so wonderful, and I have gotten to now connect with these 17 students, and it's so exciting to talk to them about their plans and their projects, and we already knew this, but we have such wonderful students here in Wallingford, and an opportunity to mentor them or just cheer them on as and remind them of deadlines and things as they do this. It's a lot of work, but it's so rewarding, and it's been a treat already, and we're just beginning. So
That's great. Well, thank you.
thank
Great
you.
job.
Thanks.
I have a question.
Yes.
So the 20 hours they do here, can that also go towards a community service requirement too, or is that in addition to?
I would think so. We hadn't fleshed that out though.
Yeah, I think the correct answer is we haven't fleshed that out yet. But I think we're looking at all things in this particular situation.
Okay, so no need to take consensus on that, right? It's just informational, or should we?
Well, if you could take
Okay.
I think we do.
Yes.
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 Great. And
Thank you.
we'll recognize our recipients hopefully in May, and that'll be great.
Great, great.
Thank
And,
you.
the public comment? Any public comments? Not, meetings adjourned. Thanks, folks.
Thank you.